Good afternoon, and thank you for joining Downtown Cleveland Alliance for the second episode of the Downtown Now webinar series in partnership with Cleveland Magazine. After the panel discussion, we will have a Q&A session. Throughout the webinar, you are welcome to submit your questions using the Q&A button on the menu bar. This way, we will have questions queued up and ready to go to start the Q&A. Also, feel free to write your thoughts and comments in the chat box, and we will do our best to address your comments throughout the broadcast. I will now turn it over to our president and CEO, Joe Marinucci.
Thanks, Jonathan, and thanks everybody for joining us. Again, I'm Joe Marinucci. I'm president and CEO of Downtown Cleveland Alliance. Downtown Cleveland Alliance is a nonprofit entity that represents the stakeholders, the businesses, the property owners in downtown Cleveland. And as many of you know, we've been around for 15 years. And hopefully you've had an opportunity not only to participate in some of our programming over the years, but also experience our ambassadors who on a day-to-day basis help to make downtown Cleveland a cleaner and safer place. This is our second episode of Downtown Now. Last week, as you know, we had three retailers representing downtown and talking about their efforts in terms of preparing for reopening and some of the issues and challenges and opportunities that they will face not only over the last week, but in the coming weeks. Today, our topic is restaurant readiness. I again want to thank our media partners, Cleveland Magazine and community leaders. As I mentioned, I also want to thank our strategic partners, in particular our property owners, our stakeholders who really support our efforts on a day-to-day basis, as well as our philanthropic partners. Today's webinar is also being carried live on Facebook and YouTube, so hopefully those of you participating through those platforms are enjoying this as well. Downtown Cleveland, as I think everybody knows, is the largest concentration in Northeast Ohio of restaurants. We have over 260 restaurants currently in downtown Cleveland. And I think all of us would agree that the success of these restaurants has been critical to the success that we've experienced in downtown Cleveland over the last decade. Not only have they provided vibrancy and opportunity for employment, but they have also helped to cement the culinary reputation that Cleveland has gained over the last few years. And again, the downtown restaurateurs, both the entrepreneurs and the chefs, have really been a part of that growth. And again, the national reputation that we've been able to achieve for Cleveland and in particular for downtown. Today, we are joined by three restaurateurs, each representing three distinct neighborhoods of the city of Cleveland and each representing a different business sector within the restaurant industry. So I know it'll be very interesting. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Michael Diemer, our Executive Vice President for Business Development. He will introduce today's panel and also will moderate today's discussion. Michael?
All right, thank you, Joe. Thank you to our audience participants for joining us today, and thanks to our panelists for being here as well. As Joe alluded to in describing Downtown Cleveland Alliance, we are a place-based development organization, and we believe in the vibrancy of downtown as a place that can attract business and talent and investment to the entire city and region. And obviously that vision of downtown has been challenged over the last couple of weeks. And restaurants have been a huge part of the identity that we've built in downtown Cleveland over the last several years. And restaurants have also been on the front lines of how businesses have been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. As restaurants are allowed to begin reopening beyond carry-out and delivery services for outdoor seating this weekend and for indoor seating next week, we thought it would be very valuable to bring together some of our restaurateurs in downtown Cleveland to hear directly from them about what they've been experiencing and how they're preparing for the days and weeks and months ahead. And I think we have an outstanding group to do that for us. We're joined today by Johnny Hutton, the owner of Zanzibar Soul Fusion, Scott Kuhn, the CEO and founder of Driftwood Restaurants and Catering, and Lori Torres, the owner of Majorca Restaurant in the Warehouse District. welcome to all of you. Johnny, I guess I'd like to begin with you and probably throw the same initial question out to all of you. I'd ask you to tell us a little bit about Zanzibar for those of our viewers that may not be familiar. And if you could tell us a little bit about some of the strategies that you've pursued over the last several weeks as a business to try to maintain your operations and prepare for the opportunity to reopen.
Okay, well, Zanzibar is an upscale soul food restaurant. We serve items with a little twist to them. We've been around for 10 years up at Shaker Square, and it'll be our 7th year downtown. Some of the things that we've done and really started a couple years ago was really focusing on our delivery services. And so fortunately, during this particular period, we've been able to sustain at least half of our staff and keep the operations moving with the online ordering and the delivery services that have been kind of pushing us through. So that's been the primary focus, but we had a head start on it. We were really growing, pushing it on our social media platforms, and that part of our business has been growing actually incrementally over the last 2.5 years.
Lori, I'd throw the same question over to you. If you could tell us a little bit about Mallorca. You've been a stalwart of downtown for many years, and tell us a little bit about how you've weathered the last couple of weeks.
Well, thank you so much for having me, first of all. And yes, Mallorca is 24 years old this year.
Wow.
Yes,
Congratulations.
a long time. I think that we were probably the first restaurant in the warehouse district that kind of created the warehouse district. So I call myself the grandmother of 9th Street. Some days I feel like that. But we are Spanish Mediterranean, anything from the Iberian Peninsula. And I've had the same staff and the same chef for almost the entire time. So I'm very fortunate. As far as the last 8 weeks go, we are a fine dining restaurant. So we're not to go, so to speak. And that was such a small part of our business that at first I tried it, but it didn't really go anywhere. And the only day that we really did take out was Mother's Day. And that's because I just had so many customers that have been coming for 20 years that said, I can't have Mother's Day without my Mallorca. So we opened for that day as to go. But we've been using the time to literally, after 24 years, it was time to paint and clean and all that kind of stuff. That's been our last 8 weeks.
Well, it sounds like you made good use of the time then. Scott, welcome to the panel. Thanks for participating. Can you tell us a little bit about Driftwood's presence in downtown and how you've approached the last couple of months of challenges?
Sure. Thanks for having us, Michael. Well, I'm in Florida. I have some medical challenges, so I've been unable to travel. So I've been weathering the business storm from my living with my parents for the first time since I was 18, with a 5-year-old, a 2-year-old, my wife. So it's been an interesting ride. But Driftwood is a multifaceted hospitality company. We're in the concessions business in the Playhouse Square district, several fine dining restaurants in the district, some fast casual restaurants, and also on the catering and events side as well. So it's been a tough go, tough sledding. Like many, I think the best thing we've practiced thus far is patience. And we did take part in things like the PPP program, but much like Lori, we've also done some cleaning and some reorganizing and a lot of soul searching and comforting of our staff and our fellow employees, trying to make sure that we all get through this okay.
Well, thanks for those introductory remarks and sharing a little bit about each of your establishments. I'd like to pivot to, kind of where we are now. The governor issued some guidance, I guess, a little over a week ago, giving restaurants some guidelines for when and how they could open for outdoor seating, when and how they can begin to open for indoor seating. Lori, I'd like to begin with you. As you saw that guidance come out and saw that there was the opportunity to resume something resembling normal business operations, what plans did you start making? How did you approach those? Lori, I think you're muted. There you go.
Okay. I think like everyone, we probably started looking physically at the space and how we were going to move the space around so that we could accommodate the social distancing, requirements. And I think also, looking at things like having the employees wear masks and gloves and how to sanitize. But I think that the hardest challenge is going to be the balancing of, I like to call it sanitation to sanity, because people are going to come to the restaurant because they want to reduce stress. They're going there to enjoy, to get away from everything. And to be slapped, the first thing they see is people with masks and gloves and sanitation signs everywhere and COVID-19. That makes it that makes it feel like a stressful experience as opposed to an entertaining experience. So I think for us, that trying to figure out how to balance the sanity with the sanitation is going to be is what we've been really talking about as a collective group, my staff and I.
I think a lot of restaurants are navigating those types of issues right now. And Johnny, I'd like to kind of go over to you and ask how you're thinking about creating an environment in the restaurant that's safe for your staff and customers, and that sort of encourages that sense of safety that customers are looking for right now.
Yeah, and I think to that point, I think that, using modest signage is going to help with that. We really don't have a choice with the mask and the gloves. But I think we're going to remove some tables, remove some chairs, and try to make it feel like as much of a normal type environment as possible. It's to that point, it's going to be difficult because they are coming out to enjoy themselves. And, your parties can only be so large. Your seating, the way you're taking your reservations versus walk-ins. Are you going to not take walk-ins? It's going to be an interesting challenge. I think we have the ingress and egress situation taken care of because of our location and our attachment to 668. But, aside from that, trying to create that same energy, people going out to eat. We have a very large bar area, which is a centerpiece of the restaurant downtown. And you really can't have a lot of people at it, so it's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult.
And I'll ask you, and Lori, I should have asked you as well. What do you have? Do you plan to open right away, or do you have a date you're targeting for reopening?
Lori?
I'm sorry, May 22nd. We'll be opening next Friday.
Okay. And Johnny?
We should be opening the same downtown next Friday, the 22nd. Shaker probably won't open until after Memorial Day. Okay. Because we actually are doing some work at Shaker. But downtown should be opening on the 22nd. Terrific.
Scott, I want to circle around to you because obviously you have a big presence with Driftwood in Playhouse Square. And I recognize the theaters and shows are a big part of your business. And, they had an announcement this week regarding the Broadway series programming for the remainder of the year that I know is tough for you to hear, given your business operations. And wanted to ask how, in light of that, how you're thinking about your downtown restaurants and when and whether to reopen.
Sure. It was tough to hear, although we had a good inkling that news was going to come. I can say in the short term, while we want people to try and feel as if it's a normal experience, we know it's not. And I think the worst thing that could happen for us as a company is to get too comfortable or too worried in trying to make people feel comfortable and potentially lose sight of the seriousness of this. The worst thing that could happen is an outbreak in one of our restaurants. So we may be a little bit more rigid, a little bit more diligent than we'd like to, but the long-term view is we've got to keep COVID-19 out of our stores. And that's our first objective. Obviously, with the news at Playhouse Square, such a great relationship with Gina and everybody across the street there. We're in constant communication with them, and we're going to wait to open those stores outside of Green Rooster, which has been open all the while, but it will open up to the fullest capacities allowable under Governor DeWine's direction, effective immediately. And the others will be on a look-see basis as we communicate with Playhouse Square and get an understanding here in the short term as to when mass gatherings would, those bans would be lifted and some smaller shows could resume, considering that Broadway won't resume until January 5th of 2021.
Well, Scott, you talked a little bit about the impact on your employees, and Lori, you touched on it a little bit as well, and you've spoken in the media about the importance of that relationship that you have with your longtime employees. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the impact you see on your workforce, and whether you're navigating any challenges with keeping them on staff, or have you had challenges keeping people working and bringing them back?
I've had the same staff for so long, so I don't even call the staff. That's. But the PPP loan, it kind of pits employees against, or employers against employees, because at the point you need them, you have to pull them off of unemployment. They're no longer eligible for the unemployment, which a lot of them are, making pretty decent money with the unemployment right now. And so I've had a couple of employees that are saying, can I wait to come back until I know that there's tips, and that is a challenge, because you don't want to pull people away from having money, but at the same time, you have to start your business again. You have to, get things moving. And so it's a moral and human kind of challenge, I think, that the PPP is trying to help businesses, but at the same time, it's also kind of pitted the employer against the employee with regard to their own financial well-being. So that's been a difficult challenge, that it will require actually for me as the employer to kind of reach into my pocket and guarantee, you come back, I will make sure that you're taken care of. And to make those kind of guarantees when we don't know how much money we're going to be making is financially a difficult thing to do. But so you're kind of making a moral versus a financial choice there.
Yeah, that's an extremely tough position to be in, and I know you're all navigating it. And Johnny, I'd look to you with a similar kind of question about what sorts of issues you're facing with your restaurant workforce through the last 2 months, and as you look to reopen on the 22nd.
Well, and that was also something that we're facing as well. There are several of our staff members that have asthma, that we've told them not to come back. Even when we were first hearing about this, the possible spread of it, that, we actually told them to go ahead and take off at that point and self-quarantine. We've already reached out to several, and I would say half of them, to Lori's point, don't want to come back yet. So I think that honoring that, because, to Scott's point, safety is the primary concern here. And of course, safety, for the consumers, but definitely safety for our staff. We've, had these things in place throughout the course of the last 8 weeks to make sure that anyone that's showing any signs, self-quarantines, got the thermometers when they first hit the door, and keeping everyone nice and clean. But it's some, especially with the tipped employees, it's really difficult to get all of them back and bring them up to the same level, that they were making when they left. And some of them are willing to take a little bit of a cut, not knowing. But I think that when we reopen, we're not going to reopen, and I don't like that term full board, because I think it's going to be a staged reopening process where if we, may see 25 to 30% of our room, that'll be a good night, and then try to bring employees back according to the, to the volume of business that's coming in the door, and just really focusing on that. And then, kind of playing it by ear, week to week, month to month, seeing how that traffic flows.
I think one of the interesting challenges that you've all kind of touched on is, the size of the customer base you can expect to attract back in. And, I think a part of that is probably the customer mix. And I want to go back to you, Scott, and kind of pick up the Playhouse Square conversation. Downtown has been very successful with all three sports facilities downtown, the theaters, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, a very vibrant restaurant scene, but the event scene has been very a big piece of the vibrancy of our downtown the last several years. As you think about a potential customer base, one that often comes up is the size of the residential population. We're approaching 20,000 residents in downtown. And I want to start with you and then ask Lori and Johnny where you anticipate drawing your customer base from as you think about reopening or plan to reopen, and specifically, how are you thinking about the downtown residential population?
Well, I wish I had that crystal ball, Michael. That's a tough question. And much like Johnny said, you have to let the revenue dictate the expenses that you bring back. There's no other way to go about doing it. And for us, having gone from over 400 employees down to 35 in a matter of days, obviously there's a lot of people that are looking to come back, and much like Lori and Johnny, there are employees that are okay with their situation right now. One of the challenges in trying to determine anything is many of the guidelines and regulations relative to our industry, they haven't been written yet. They're being talked about, they're being changed. And so a decision you might make today might not make sense tomorrow. And you have to pivot so very quickly as new information, new data comes in. But relative to the downtown community in terms of residences, obviously the Lumen, looking forward to open, I believe in August, if it's still on schedule, in Playhouse Square. Lots of buildings like 668. There is density down there. Our core customer is the theater goer. That probably makes up 80% of our business. The other 20 coming from both residences and employees working downtown. So we're in a little bit of a holding pattern downtown outside of Green Rooster. We do have the Welshfield Inn in Burton that will be open. That will be a litmus test for us to really see how the consumer emotions are and how they respond to this new dining experience. And we'll apply that to downtown once we see how that goes.
And I guess, Johnny, I'll go back to you as you, as you think about who your customer base is likely to be. Do you anticipate it being different than previously, and how are you adapting to that?
I think the mix that we have will be the same. I just think it will just be less. Mm-hmm. But to what degree, I don't know for sure. We have a nice group of folks that work downtown that come into the restaurant. We're in 668, so we've got, folks that come downstairs and come to the restaurant. We're attached to the garage, with our, discounted pricing for parking, for people that are dining in the restaurant. And we get folks that come up 77 from Akron and Columbus, up 71, coming in from Youngstown. So I think that we don't know yet. And that's why, almost a controlled seating environment is really, you bring folks back in for a particular budget amount, and then you seat accordingly. And if you see the demand is starting to increase and where it's increasing from, then you have to make the modification at that point. But it's really tough. We don't know. We have no idea how this is going to look with folks coming out. You know, if I look at some neighborhoods, people walking around with no mask on. I don't understand it, you know, but they are. And then you look at some other types of environments and you don't see anyone without a mask. You know, so I'm not sure, you know, how each segment of our clientele is feeling about, you know, COVID right now. But we have to treat it, you know, to the, you know, on that, you know, by event basis.
Well, you raise an interesting question there about the, you know, how restaurant customers are going to react and behave across the board. And Lori, maybe I'd ask you what you hope to see from diners, and what can diners do as they come in to you know, be safe and to help your team feel safe as well.
I think that when it comes to the diners and us, they should know that we kind of adopted a mantra of first do no harm. So our first concern is going to be to make sure that they're safe, they're healthy, that we're safe, that we're healthy, and that also, you know, that they enjoy the experience. But with regard to customers that, you know, our customer base, and I'm not sure if I'm answering you properly, but as with regard to our customer base or the people that are going to come into Mallorca, I guess what I would ask of them is that they understand that we too are navigating a new world, and that we're going to have to do things in a different way that we've done before. And I kind of come from the belief that our most important asset as human beings is our empathy, and that we are here to help each other out, love each other, lift each other up. And that in that mantra, we will be looking for kindness and for patience as we try to make the experience good for them, but they need to understand that this is a whole new experience, and that a lot of the employees will be working under relatively stressful circumstances because they're not sure what their revenue will be. They're having to wear masks. They're having to do things in a way that they've never done before. So with regard to people coming into Mallorca, I would ask that more than anything, kindness and patience.
It's probably a good message across the board for everybody. Before we turn it over to some questions from the participants, you know, I'd like to ask, you know, how organizations like Downtown Cleveland Alliance can be most helpful to you as we enter this next phase. You know, Lori, John, I know Tom Sterinsky from the Warehouse District and Gateway District has been reaching out to restaurants and shops in your neighborhoods. Scott, I know Playhouse Square as a neighborhood is very engaged with you and the other restaurateurs in the district. You know, but whether it's marketing, connecting with residents, office workers, advocating on policy issues, I'd like to ask each of you to speak to how organizations like ours can be most helpful to you right now. And Scott, I'd begin with you.
I think organizations like yourself are immensely helpful, whether it's as buying customers to feed your staffs, whether it's helping us spread messages that we need help spread. These are such unique times, and every restaurateur right now is under attack from so many angles, whether it's the insurance angle, the PPP angle, the rehire angle, unemployment angles, customer angles. Everybody could just use all the help that is out there. And I think we would be fools to not take advantage of everything that's offered to us in this time right now.
Understood. Johnny, can I circle back to you and pose the same question?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, for us, to Scott's point, any and everything, that you guys have available, we need to be using those tools and resources. And messaging, I think, is going to be huge right now. I think messaging is probably going to be the biggest piece. If there's a way for us to constantly communicate and update the downtown worker, the downtown resident on exactly at what stage our operation is at and what could be coming down the pipe. If parking or delivery lanes, or if any of those things are changing, having a vehicle to be able to push that out quickly and having an audience to push it to would be absolutely huge.
Well, we're very happy to play that role, and that's the least we can do to try to support what you're doing. So we're happy to do that. Lori?
I think probably twofold is that as downtown restaurants and businesses, is that we try to work collaboratively with each other in first just trying to get people to come downtown, because a lot of people are going to be used to kind of hanging out around their house and going to the restaurants around their house, just getting people to come downtown, using collaborative efforts for that. And I think the second thing is working with the city to kind of relax a lot of the regulations that we have on parking and using of sidewalks. And I know that there's a big push to always try to get the traffic out of the city, and that's a big major thing. But at this point, traffic into the city would be a blessing. So maybe converting those the time that we're spending on the logistics of moving people out, and maybe the marketing of getting people into the city.
Well, we're happy to help with all of those things that all three of you have raised. We're working very closely with the city on the regulatory and traffic issues, and completely agree that spreading the word about when restaurants are open and trying to bolster your marketing efforts is something that we're very committed to doing. I'd like to pause here with our discussion. I know we have over 60 folks in the audience here on Zoom, and there's more watching on Facebook and YouTube, and some questions are starting to roll in. So Jonathan, I'd like to look to you, and if you could share some of the questions that are coming in via Zoom.
Sure. So this first question is for all of the panelists. What do you think are the long-term implications for the restaurant industry in downtown Cleveland?
Who wants to go first?
Scott.
Go for it, Scott.
I don't want to sound pessimistic, but I think this thing is going to swallow up 40 to 50% of the restaurants that we know. And in a lot of ways, it's interesting to me. I don't want anybody to be one of the restaurants that fails, but coming into this crisis, we were in a different crisis. We couldn't find anyone to work in our stores. And so in a way, the bubble had to burst in some degree. And so coming out of this, we know that there will be labor out there available to us, but this thing is going to really be difficult for people to overcome, even the best of operators. And so people need support, and they need the communities to get out and go support these restaurants and event centers and concessionaires, everybody, because every penny will count in this fight.
I appreciate that perspective. Johnny or Lori, would you like to weigh in?
For sure, is that we're going to be required to be our very, very best, even more than our best that we work for, at marketing, at providing the best thing. But I also think that I agree that there are going to be a lot of that get swallowed up by this. And, I do think that restaurants who have an existence, a reputation already, that it'll help because people will know that we're there. I would hate to be a restaurant that is just brand new. And because on top of everything else, now they're going to have to market their existence to an already saturated amount of marketing that's going to be out there for the restaurants that exist. So it's going to be a tough road to hoe, but we'll get through it.
Appreciate the optimism.
All right. And for our next question, this is also to all of the panelists. How confident are you and how long do you think you can maintain business operations with less staff and a less number of customers per day?
Johnny, you want to take a shot?
Well, once again, I think that we also have to be creative. I think that we have to find different areas to step into that we hadn't before. You know, the food truck area, the catering space, you know, we really have to reach out to pull these customers in. To Lori's point, to those that really don't have a large following, it's going to be extremely difficult. But even to those that do, I think that we really have to get creative in how we're, you know, getting our business out there. I think it's going to be a lot more involved with getting our business to the people because they've really gotten used to, you know, having the food dropped off at their door, you know, and I don't know what impact that's going to have on, you know, dine in, but I know that it's time to be more creative than ever in how we do this. And I think that also, especially with downtown and we're unique that way, we can put a lot of collaborations together, you know, a lot of joint restaurant type events, you know, to really expose or re-expose ourselves to, you know, our market in different venues. And so I think there should be a lot more of that going on, you know, where we're actually getting together and helping each other.
Good, Scott.
I think one of the interesting things that has come out of this crisis is the business model of the restaurant has kind of become the focal of conversation in the national media, and how small our margins are and how difficult it is, which is refreshing to see because it's a very, very challenging business. And to answer the question that came across, each business has a different fixed expense as you go through this. And so we have restaurants that get in real trouble in 5 months, and we have restaurants that could go a year. It's really just dependent upon that store and the recurring expenses that are attached to it. But we're hard pressed. I mean, we're fighting as hard as we can for as long as we can to answer the question.
Jonathan, we go to the next question, please.
Sure. Will you be providing full menus or modified menus as you gauge traffic from customers?
Lori, can you go first on that one?
Yeah, I think from our perspective, just because of the fact that there are going to be things we can't get, that we'll have to modify the menu. You know, meat shortages. There are we are a seafood predominantly restaurant, and there are some seafoods right now that I just won't order because I don't know how fresh they are, because the distributors themselves have access to supply when we had to close. So there are certain things that I just won't order because I want the fresh stuff. So I think that it's going to require that menus change, and also the cost of things is going to be higher. So if we want to maintain the reputation of being a fine dining restaurant that's affordable, there are going to be things that I just won't be able to put on the menu anymore.
Johnny, same question to you, and if I could add a specific question, will the barbecued salmon still be on the menu?
The barbecue salmon will remain on the menu. Salmon prices haven't jumped tremendously. You know, our pork chop we're struggling with. You know, getting the basic chicken parts is difficult, especially for the size of bird that we use. So there are some items that we've already taken off the menu that we can't keep on a consistent basis. So there's definitely going to be some changes, but we'll push through the best that we can, but there will definitely be menu changes.
Jonathan, we have any more questions coming in from the audience?
Yes, we do. How can customers show respect or be helpful to restaurant staff in terms of personnel or personal protective equipment and etiquette in the restaurants?
Lori, I think you talked about that a little bit. Johnny, Scott, would you like to speak to that question?
So the question is, how can customers be respectful? Well, I think that maintaining the social distancing guidelines is probably the best thing folks can do. And also remembering that I believe, and this is a belief, that the mask itself is to make sure that you're not spreading it to someone else, more so than, you getting it yourself. And so I think the more folks that are coming in and using social distancing or respecting social distancing and using the mask themselves, keeping their hands clean, and that's the basics, pretty much maintaining the basics, when you're coming into any establishment, just make sure you're clean.
No, I think you raise a good point that it's something that we're trying to communicate across the board. As folks come back into downtown, the masks are, as you put it, really more about protecting your, the people around you as much as yourself.
Right.
And that's probably an important message to continue to put out there. More questions from the audience, Jonathan? I think you're muted.
Sorry. Will public restrooms be sanitized more often throughout the day in restaurants?
Lori, restroom sanitation.
I think everything's going to be more sanitized.
Probably bears repeating.
Yeah, they're gonna, again, with the first do no harm, the first concern is gonna be making sure that everything is sanitized, from the table that they sit in, to the chairs that they sit at, to the handles that they touch, to, the silverware they use, the bar, everything. I think sanitation is gonna be key, crucial, of course. And that, of course, includes bathrooms. But I think people should remember that restaurants in general have always had a higher standard, because we're required to have a higher standard for cleanliness in our kitchens, everywhere. That's just part of the health department rules. So although a lot of this is new, a lot of it is also what we've been doing. Restaurants have a very high standard that we're required to meet in order to keep the doors open.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and for our final question, Johnny, you kind of, mentioned being more creative. So the question is, has anyone looked into, alternative methods of serving, street closures, for example, to expand outdoor seating, things that are happening in other cities?
Yes, so I think that's something we need to look into. Having those street cafes periodically would be a great thing to do, especially in a moderate temperature area like Cleveland. I think that having something like that, where, once again, this could be a joint restaurant collaboration, event, where every now and then we shut a particular street down and just have open air cafe. And give it a test run, see how it goes. I think doing things like that could definitely be a little boost, just like our holidays are. Certain holidays are beneficial to us. We all like one of those really big days of the month, that can, have an impact on the restaurant. So I would definitely look at something like that with our partners.
I appreciate the question and the answer, Johnny, and just kind of reiterate that those conversations are happening with the city, and we are looking at those types of strategies. So it's helpful to hear from our restaurateurs that those types of things would indeed be helpful. Well, it sounds like that's it for the questions from the audience. I guess as we close, I'd like to ask each of you to kind of close like we began. If you want to make a few closing remarks about, when you're opening, and any messages that you want to send to all the prospective downtown diners that may be listening in. And Lori, I'd begin with you, and then go to Johnny and Scott.
Okay, I'll just say this: that we are the hard thing for us about the COVID-19 is that we're a very huggy crowd. So we kind of say, when you come to Mallorca, if you don't get a hug on the way in, you're gonna get one or want one on the way out. And so we're kind of having to be creative with how we're going to express our love in different ways now. So don't worry, when you come to Mallorca, our smiles might look different, and our hugs and our kisses might look different, but the love is still the same. We still are so excited to see you guys. We can't wait to invite back our longtime family to Mallorca, and hopefully invite some new family members from downtown.
Johnny, how about you? I think we have you. Yeah, there you go.
On now. So our plan, the only thing that would alter this would be staffing, but our plan is to open downtown inside on the 22nd. It will be to limited seating. There'll be some tables that aren't there anymore, at least during this period anyway. And we just ask that everyone be patient, because we won't be able to take walk-ins the way that we did. We won't be able to take reservations. We'll have a lot closed off. And we just ask that you call ahead to find out what we're doing. Our hours are going to be the same. It's still 11 a.m. till 10 p.m. In the dining room. And I would say just be patient with us, because we won't be able to take care of everyone. But we'll do the best we can.
And over to you, Scott.
Yeah, if you're in the district in Playoff Square, Green Rooster will be happy to take care of you. Pick up, delivery, sit down to our fullest abilities. And outside of downtown, the Welshfield Inn will be open and take advantage of their 21 acres of space. So we call it gracious social distancing out there. But, much like Johnny said, everybody be patient, respectful of one of each other, and obviously stay healthy.
Well, I want to thank each of you for taking the time and joining us today and sharing your experiences. I want to thank our audience for being here. And on behalf of all the staff at Downtown Cleveland Alliance, I want to say to the restaurateurs and the audience that we're committed to working with all of you to help you be successful as we enter these next phases. And we are working hard and look forward to welcoming diners and customers into our shops and restaurants, our office workers, as we're all really in this together to make sure that downtown is a clean, safe, and welcoming environment as we enter the next phases of reopening and getting back together. So I look forward to seeing all of you in your restaurants, hopefully with as many customers as the law will allow, and look forward to keeping in touch with all of you. Thank you once again.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
So much.
Thank you very much.